All right, so we left off talking about the marketing philosophies, and I didn't get to the first one. I talked about the definition of marketing and the evolving definition as we move into viewing marketing in a broader context. And I think I told you all that I added to the definition of marketing that I think that we ought to say, did I tell you this, that it's a pervasive social activity. That we constantly do this. We're constantly marketing. Even when we don't think we're marketing, we're constantly doing it. We constantly want to have interaction. Aristotle says man is by nature a social creature. Now, I don't think this is something that we should go up in a balloon over, because there are other social creatures. As we look out across the lawn today, there are all of the geese that last spring laid their eggs and then hatched, and they're social creatures. They mate for long periods of time. They work well in groups. So what makes man different from the geese? Well, maybe it's that we engage in marketing. We constantly are finding needs and ways of filling those needs and helping each other out. And so we talked about this idea of the primitive society even engaged in marketing. But marketing as an academic discipline really emerges to be studied beginning at the beginning of the 20th century. And so that definition of marketing shows this evolution from just focusing on businesses and the production of goods and services and moving them from that to this broader definition that recognizes that we all play a part in marketing, and then what I contribute or what I add to it, I think that we constantly engage in it. And so we began talking about these philosophies of marketing, and these philosophies correspond to different time periods. But one of the things that you should remember in thinking about these is that although the philosophies correspond to a particular epoch, there are still companies that find value even in the older philosophy and still utilize those philosophies. So we didn't get through production philosophy, did we? We didn't talk about that? So the sort of original philosophy in the early years of the marketing discipline was what we might call the production era. And for most of human history, we see the production philosophy being the dominant philosophy in marketing. How many of you have seen a relatively old movie now called Field of Dreams? Quite a few of you. What's it about? Baseball. Baseball. Why am I talking about baseball in a marketing class? What's the takeaway from Field of Dreams? What's the one line that emerges from that? If you build it, they will come. That was most of human history. If you built it, people would buy it. Because it was so much better than what we had before. If you build it, they will come. If you take your eggs to the market, well, I don't have a chicken, so I might buy your eggs. Even in the 1950s, you could sell any old inferior egg. What do eggs come in today? This is, again, I told you all that maybe the most important word in marketing is differentiation. You'd think an egg is an egg. It's not. What kinds of eggs do we have now? What? We don't have chocolate eggs. Well, we do have chocolate eggs, I guess. Free-range eggs. We've got Eggland's Best. No hormones, no antibiotics used in the production of the eggs. All of these things. Organic eggs that are used to distinguish between. So it's no longer, I can't just sell my eggs. I'm going to have to figure out a better way to sell my eggs. So the production era, we say it begins with the Industrial Revolution, although for most of human history, the production era was an accurate portrayal. But really in 1900 to about 1920, we see this production philosophy being used. If you build it, they will come. You didn't have to be all that great, because what you offered was so much better than that which came before that the consumer would accept it. The classic example is Henry Ford and the Model T. He didn't build the first automobile And contrary to popular belief, he wasn't the first to invent an assembly line. That was invented before Henry Ford, but he was the first to really make use of it and modernize it and make it the moving assembly line. And he built the first mass-produced automobile for just regular people. The Model T, you could have it in any color you wanted so long as the color was black. As long as the color was black, if you're happy with black, that's not going to work anymore. Is it? Why not? Okay? We have lots of choices now. At the time that Ford comes out with that, what was your alternative? Horses. And what's wrong with the horse? It's slow. What else? You have to feed it, although automobiles you have to feed. It's called gasoline, but it's more reliable. The horse could die, although I guess the automobile could die. They kick. It's not enclosed. You get wet. They have attitudes. The automobile doesn't have an attitude. The horse has a little mind of its own. So it's so much better. But other people start coming in, and you get the sales era. I wish people would throw these markers away when they're no good. They just keep putting them back in the box, and then all of you can throw this away. So the Dodge brothers come along, and they enter the market. And now you no longer have just one person. The sales era or philosophy from 1920 to about 1950, depending on which scholar you listen to. There are some that peg it earlier than that in the 1940s that say we get a sales era, or the 19-teens that we get the sales era, and it goes through the 1950s. Some will say we move into the other era, the marketing era, much earlier than that. But that's a good rough time frame, 1920. We start seeing more and more people enter the market, and so now you have to focus on getting your product out there and getting it sold. And so you hire sales teams that go around. They focus on what we might call transactional selling. Now, I said that these still work. There's examples of the production era still in use today. Companies that are high-tech companies that still use, or did until recently, this production philosophy. What's an example of a company that might use a production mentality or production philosophy with regard to its goods? Microsoft is clearly one. They have the dominant share of the OS market. And if you want an OS that's not a Microsoft product, you're left with what? Now, on smaller devices, Apple, for the most part. So, because they have 80% of the market share of the PC OS, they can foist crappy products off on us and we take them. Windows Vista. Wonderful example of something that should never have been released. They've now released their newest OS. What is it? Windows 10. How many of you are just waiting with bated breath to download Windows 10? Yeah. You know, it's a product-driven company. Apple is a product-driven company. Steve Jobs thought, you all don't know what you want. I'll tell you what you want. And he did. Completely product-driven. No market research whatsoever. The sales era, we still see examples of this transactional approach to selling where it's about making a pitch, getting interest, using what we might call, and we'll talk more about this, the AIDA model, awareness, interest, desire, action, where you make a pitch, you make people aware, you get some interest that builds desire and leads to an action, which is the purchasing of a product. And there are still companies that use this. Did I tell you what my favorite fall activity is? I normally review the tapes, which, by the way, I will almost always have the videos posted before the next class. One of the files got corrupted, and so I've been trying to fix it, so I couldn't watch the end of the last class. So I don't remember what I said at the end of the last class. So I will try to get that up. Hopefully I'll get lectures 2, which was last Thursday, and 3, which is today, up this afternoon. But I was trying to fix the corrupted file from the camcorder, and so I didn't quite get it all. I'm going to post lecture 2 in 2 parts, because I just cut out that last part as I'm trying to find a fix for it online to see if there's something that can convert what happened with the capture of the video so that you can still see that. So I didn't tell you what my favorite fall activity is. I'm seeing blank stares. Nobody's shouting it out. It's the Oklahoma State Fair. I love the fair. How many of you are going to go to the fair this year? It's coming up in September. A lot of you. You should go to the fair. It's so much fun, isn't it? Fair food. It's the food. I mean, you go for the corn dogs. The poncho dogs are absolutely the best. But it's also a remarkable study in what people would rather have than their own money. And it's all about the sales philosophy. So you go through the different buildings. One of the reasons I go to the fair is because I grew up on a cattle ranch. And so I love to watch the livestock. And I like to watch the horse shows and the rodeo and things like that. But then I wander into the buildings and see what there is to buy. And it's about gaining interest from the customer and getting them to buy your product. And you don't really care much beyond that, because what happens at the end of, it used to be, when I was growing up, the fair was 4 weeks. And then it was 3 weeks. And then it was 2 weeks. And now it's 10 days. Or 12 days. I can't remember. I think it's 12 days this year. So what happens at the end of the 12 days with these vendors in the sale barns? They pack up and go to the next fair. They're not really cared about service after the sale. So it's all about making the pitch, getting interest, creating desire, and getting action from you. This sales mentality, this transactional sales mentality. There are still companies that use this mentality. How many of you remember Billy Mays? What was Billy's most successful product? OxyClean. ShamWow, Billy died by the time they introduced the shit, and they got the skinny guy to replace Billy. But OxyClean, he had all these products. It was about creating interest. Orange Glow for your floors that was supposed to restore the luster of wood floors without a whole lot of work. And if you've ever had wood floors, you know there are a lot of work to redo them, refinish them, put new polyurethane on them. And so they offer a money-back guarantee, but how many people are actually going to send the Orange Glow back? Not many. Is OxyClean nearly as wonderful as Billy said it was? It's a pretty good product, but does it take out blood just as easily as you claimed? No, it doesn't. But did you send it back? No, why not? It was functional, not a high-risk product. It works pretty well. So the sales era. Then we get the marketing, beginning in the 1950s, some people say in the 40s, the marketing era. And this goes to, I don't know, 1980 or 1990, depending on what you're focusing on and which scholar you read. These time frames are, of course, again, not hard and fast. What we begin to see is that it's no longer good enough just to get people out there and get sales. We now make the customer a part of the team. We study the customer. Advances in scientific sampling led to this development and our ability to reach people much earlier on and in a much larger number to conduct things like focus groups. How many of you have watched a show called Mad Men? In some of the early seasons of Mad Men, they showed focus groups with women where they'd bring them in and have them try cosmetics out, making the customer a part of the team, finding out what they want. And so studying the customer becomes the focus of the marketing era and figuring out how we can provide even more of what they want. It's no longer good enough to just produce goods like the production era for a homogeneous society. There's a recognition that we're highly fractured. We're not just all the same. We all want different things. We're individuals. We're unique. And so learning about the customer. Finally, we get The current era, which you can say begins in the 1980s, maybe the 1990s, again, depending on who you talk to. And we call this the relationship era. Or, and this is a test question, the era of value co-creation. It's about recognizing that customers are not just people to be sold to, but you want to have an ongoing relationship with them. Why would you want to have an ongoing relationship with your customer? You want them to buy more of your stuff. It's expensive to recruit a customer. That's called prospecting, and it takes time and energy. It's easier to keep a customer than it is to go find a new customer. It costs money. And so customers in this era have value, and we can measure that customer lifetime value. We want to have long-term relationships with them. It's not just about making the sale and going on, or it's not just about figuring out what they want, providing it, and then moving on. It's about not just understanding, but empathizing with our customers. Being friends with our customers. Era of value co-creation. So, in this era of value co-creation, we see things like mass customization. How many of you like M&Ms? A few of you. Why do you like M&Ms? Their chocolate goodness. What else do you like about M&Ms? It's also a texture deal, isn't it? It's not just chocolate goodness. They're crunchy. They've got that crunch to them.
They're colorful. They're appealing.
They're what?
Colorful.
They're colorful. They've got nice colors. They're aesthetically appealing. Forever and ever and ever, M&Ms were 4 or 5 basic colors. I remember when I was in, I think, junior high, they released a new color of M&M. It was a big deal. But they were all came in this little sort of cellophane package that was brown that said M&Ms on it. Well, now, how do you get M&Ms? Well, you can get M&Ms a lot of different ways. It's no longer just about this brown cellophane package. They've engaged in value co-creation, and you can personalize your M&M. So it no longer just comes in one package. You can get bulk. You can get it in tins. You can get it in a bubblegum machine. You can get them in all kinds of different colors. Forever they were primarily just the primary colors. Red, yellow, brown, things like that. Now you can get them in pastels. You can get your creepy picture for your wedding. Put on the M&M. And customize your colors. You can get them in little pouches, in tins, wrappers for your guests with your own logo. Isn't that great? You can have your special day on an M&M. It's no longer just this little hard candy. It's a whole lot of things. They're wonderful. So we engage in this relationship and value co-creation. Keep people coming back, to keep them as our customers, to keep them happy. Now, some customers you're not going to want. You don't want every customer. They may cost you too much money. You may decide that you don't want them. We'll talk about that when we talk about marketing segmentation. But recognizing that it's easier in most cases to not go out and prospect than to keep a customer. So this era of value co-creation is really, really important. I want you to watch a video, and then we're going to get into your groups, and I'm going to give you the rest of the hour and come back next time and talk about what your answer to the critical thinking challenge is for this video. We'll also sometime today post the winner of Thursday's critical thinking challenge. I was going to do that before now, but again I started focusing on getting the video up and loaded, and so I didn't get that out. I apologize to that for that, but I will get that up today as soon as I do that. But I want you to consider this video and what in this era of value co-creation we can learn from educators.
So that's kind of an obvious statement up there. I started with that sentence about 12 years ago, and I started in the context of developing countries. But you're sitting here from every corner of the world. So if you think of a map of your country, I think you realize that for every country on earth, you could draw little circles to say these are places where good teachers won't go. On top of that, those are the places from where trouble comes. So we have an ironic problem. Good teachers don't want to go to just those places where they're needed the most. I started in 1999 to try and address this problem with an experiment, which was a very simple experiment in New Delhi. I basically embedded a computer into a wall of a slum in New Delhi. The children barely went to school, they didn't know any English, they'd never seen a computer before, and they didn't know what the internet was. I connected high-speed internet to it, it's about 3 feet off the ground, turned it on and left it there. After this, we noticed a couple of interesting things which you'll see, but I repeated this all over India and then through a large part of the world, and noticed that children will learn to do what they want to learn to do. This is the first experiment that we did. 8-year-old boy on your right, teaching his student, a 6-year-old girl, and he was teaching her how to browse. This boy here in the middle of central India, this is in a Rajasthan village, where the children recorded their own music and then played it back to each other, and in the process they enjoyed themselves thoroughly. They did all of this in 4 hours after seeing the computer for the first time. In another South Indian village, these boys here had assembled a video camera and were trying to take the photograph of a bumblebee. They downloaded it from Disney.com or one of these websites 14 days after putting the computer in their village. So at the end of it, we concluded that groups of children can learn to use computers and the internet on their own, irrespective of who or where they were. At that point, I became a little more ambitious and decided to see what else could children do with a computer. We started off with an experiment in Hyderabad, India, where I gave a group of children, they spoke English with a very strong Telugu accent. I gave them a computer with a speech-to-text interface, which you now get free with Windows, and asked them to speak into it. So when they spoke into it, the computer typed out gibberish. So they said, oh, it doesn't understand anything of what we are saying. So I said, yeah, I'll leave it here for 2 months. Make yourself understood to the computer. So the children said, how do we do that? And I said, I don't know actually. And I left. 2 months later, and this is now documented in the Information Technology for International Development Journal, their accents had changed and were remarkably close to the neutral British accent in which I had trained the speech-to-text synthesizer. In other words, they were all speaking like James Tooley. So they could do that on their own. After that, I started to experiment with various other things that they might learn to do on their own. I got an interesting phone call once from Colombo, from the late Arthur C. Clarke, who said, I want to see what's going on. And he couldn't travel, so I went over there. He said two interesting things. A teacher that can be replaced by a machine should be. The second thing he said was that if children have interest, then education happens. And I was doing that in the field, so every time I would watch it and think of it.
Possible, and they can definitely help people because the children really quickly learn to navigate the web and find things which interest them. And when you've got interest, then you have education.
I took the experiment to South Africa. This is a 15-year-old boy.
This machine, I play games like animals, and I listen to music.
And I asked him, do you send emails? And he said yes, and they hop across the ocean. This is in Cambodia, rural Cambodia. A very silly arithmetic game, which no child would play inside the classroom or at home. They would, throw it back at you. They'd say, this is very boring. If you leave it on the pavement, and if all the adults go away, then they will show off with each other about what they can do, which is what these children are doing. So they're trying to multiply, I think. And all over India, at the end of about 2 years, children were beginning to Google their homework. As a result, the teachers reported tremendous improvements in their English. Rapid improvements and all sorts of things. They said they've become really deep thinkers and so on and so on. And indeed they had. I mean, if there's stuff on Google, why would you need to stuff it into your head? So at the end of the next 4 years, I decided that groups of children can navigate the internet to achieve educational objectives on their own. At that time, a large amount of money had come into Newcastle University to improve schooling in India. So Newcastle gave me a call. I said, I'll do it from Delhi. They said, there's no way you're going to handle £1 million worth of university money sitting in Delhi. So in 2006, I bought myself a heavy overcoat and moved to Newcastle. I wanted to test the limits of this system. The first experiment I did out of Newcastle was actually done in India, and I set myself an impossible target. Can Tamil-speaking 12-year-old children in a South Indian village teach themselves biotechnology in English on their own? And I thought, I'll test them, they'll get a 0, I'll give them material, I'll come back and test them, they'll get another 0, I'll go back and say, yes, we need teachers for certain things. I called in 26 children, they all came in there, I told them that there's some really difficult stuff on this computer. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't understand anything. It's all in English, and I'm going. So I left them with it. I came back after 2 months, and the 26 children marched in looking very, very quiet. I said, well, did you look at any of the stuff? They said, yes, we did. Did you understand anything? No, nothing. So I said, well, how long did you practice on it before you decided that you understood nothing? They said, we look at it every day. So I said, for 2 months you were looking at stuff you didn't understand. So a 12-year-old girl raises her hand and says, literally, apart from the fact that improper replication of the DNA molecule causes genetic disease, we've understood nothing else. Took me 3 years to publish that. It's just been published in the British Journal of Educational Technology. One of the referees who refereed the paper said, it's too good to be true, which was not very nice. Well, one of the girls had taught herself to become the teacher, and that's her over there. Remember, they don't study English. I've edited out the last bit where she said, when I asked where is the neuron, and she says, the neuron, and then she looked and did this. But her expression was not very nice. So their scores had gone up from 0 to 30%, which is an educational impossibility under the circumstances. But 30% is not a pass. So I found that they had a friend, a local accountant, a young girl, and they played football with her. I asked that girl, would you teach them enough biotechnology to pass? And she said, how would I do that? I don't know the subject. I said, no, use the method of the grandmother. She said, what's that? I said, well, what you've got to do is stand behind them and admire them all the time. Just say to them, that's cool, that's fantastic, what is that? Can you do that again? Can you show me some more? She did that for 2 months. The scores went up to 50, which is what the posh schools of New Delhi with a trained biotechnology teacher were getting. So I came back to Newcastle with these results and decided that there was something happening here that definitely was getting very serious. So having experimented in all sorts of remote places, I came to the most remote place that I could think of. Across the River Tyne, 5,000 miles from Delhi, is the little town of Gateshead. In Gateshead, I took 32 children and I started to fine-tune a method. I made them into groups of 4. I said, you make your own groups of 4. Each group of 4 can use 1 computer and not 4 computers. Remember from the hole in the wall. You can exchange groups, you can walk across to another group if you don't like your group, etc. You can go to another group, peer over their shoulders, see what they're doing, come back to your own group and claim it as your own work. And I explained to them that a lot of scientific research is done using that method. The children enthusiastically got after me, so now what do you want us to do? I gave them 6 GCSE questions. The first group, the best one, solved everything in 20 minutes. The worst in 45. They used everything that they knew. News groups, Google, Wikipedia, Ask Jeeves, etc. The teacher said, is this deep learning? I said, well, let's try it. I'll come back after 2 months. We'll give them a paper test, no computers, no talking to each other, etc. The average score when I had done it with the computers and the groups was 76%. When I did the experiment, when I did the test after 2 months, the score was 76%. There was photographic recall inside the children. I suspect because they're discussing with each other. A single child in front of a single computer will not do that. I have further results which are almost unbelievable of scores which go up with time. Because their teachers say that after the session is over, the children continue to Google further. Here in Britain, I put out a call for British grandmothers after my Coupam experiment. Well, with the very vigorous people, British grandmothers, 200 of them volunteered immediately. The deal was that they would give me 1 hour of broadband time sitting at their homes 1 day in a week. So they did that, and over the last 2 years, over 600 hours of instruction has happened over Skype, using what my students call the granny cloud. Granny cloud sits over there, I can beam them to whichever school I want to.
You can't catch me. You say it. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. Well done. Very good circus yet. How about after Supreme?
Back in Gateshead, a 10-year-old girl gets into the heart of Hinduism in 15 minutes. Stuff which I don't know anything about. 2 children watch a TED Talk. They wanted to be footballers before. After watching 8 TED Talks, he wants to become Leonardo da Vinci. It's pretty simple stuff. This is what I'm building now. They're called souls, self-organized learning environments. The furniture is designed so that children can sit in front of big, powerful screens, big broadband connections, but in groups. If they want, they can call the nanny cloud. This is the Soul in Newcastle. The mediator is from Pune, India. So how far can we go? One last little bit and I'll stop. I went to Turin in May. I sent all the teachers away from my group of 10-year-old students. I speak only English, they speak only Italian. So we had no way to communicate. I started writing English questions on the blackboard. The children looked at it and said, what? I said, well, do it. They typed it into Google, translated it into Italian, went back into Italian Google. 15 minutes later, next question, where is Calcutta? This one they took only 10 minutes. I tried a really hard one then. Who was Pythagoras and what did he do? There was silence for a while. Then they said, you spelled it wrong. It's Pythagora. And then, in 20 minutes, the right angle triangles began to appear on the screens. It just sent shivers up my spine. These are 10-year-olds. So you know what's happened? I think we've just stumbled across a self-organizing system. A self-organizing system is one where a structure appears without explicit intervention from the outside. Self-organizing systems also always show emergence, which is that the system starts to do things which it was never designed for, which is why you react the way you do, because it looks impossible. I think I can make a guess now. Education is a self-organizing system where learning is an emergent phenomenon. It will take a few years to prove it experimentally, but I'm going to try. But in the meanwhile, there is a method available. 1 billion children, we need 100 million mediators, there are many more than that on the planet, 10 million souls, $180 billion and 10 years. We could change everything. Thanks.
So notice that even in education, that was a marketing pitch, wasn't it? We wanted you to participate in this ongoing dialogue involving education. So what I want you to do in your groups is I want you to figure out how marketers can use things like this in this era of value co-creation. What can we learn from Dr. Mitra about how we can market our products better in this era of value co-creation? And then think about chapter 2, developing strategies for success. What can we do to develop strategies for success? What can we learn about that from this video? So I'll give you the rest of the time. On Thursday, we'll talk about your answers. If you have any questions, let me know. Where's the roll sheet? All right, so it made it all the way through the class. If you didn't sign the roll sheet, sign the roll sheet. You have the remainder of the period to talk about in your groups. Come up with a really wonderful answer for the critical thinking challenge that we'll talk about on Thursday, and we'll also move into chapter 2 on developing organizational strategies. All right?